Sequel number 40 of the Church of Uganda at 150 years, a celebration of our church history by Christopher Amos Chikomekontambi, the producer. Welcome. In this sequel, Mwanga II flees, this time for good. However, what was the background? In January 1897, the British Permanent Assistant Commissioner George Wilson Tayari tightened the rules around Mwanga II, for example, prohibiting him from addressing the Great Lukiko. This he did because he felt that members were always intimidated by his presence. So if he would be absent, the better. Mwanga's character was so good at cramming individuals' names. This is according to the diaries of the colonialists who used to attend the Lukiko sometimes. They say that, for example, Mwanga would call someone's name first before greeting him. Now, do you know how that personal it becomes? Somebody that great knows your name, somebody that great refers to you by name and then greets you. Okay, they say that he would then always laugh first before calling someone by name. Chikomeko, you know. Mwanga too enjoyed his laughter, they say. That way, Mwanga was able to get a kitchen cabinet led by senior page Tito Nyago. In the same month, Assistant Commissioner Tayari ordered all the palace page boys to attend missionary bush schools. And so the chiefs had to allow the page boys to go to bush schools. Mwanga II accepted to also allow his page boys to attend to bush schools, although he kept a few trusted ones, the ones we already know. So January 1897 marked the end of the chieftaincies being the schools and the bush schools becoming the real schools, although the residence of the boys continued to be in the chieftaincies and they continued to work in the chieftaincies, but now the time there had reduced, minus the time that they had to spend in the bush schools with the missionary teachers, or with the missionary teacher-trained catechists. Now, how then does trouble begin that ends into the fleeing of the Kabaka? Of course, this is one of them. He no longer even has powers over his own pages or the chiefs. So all this is disturbing him. So the two catechulos read the new rules to Mwanga II, and this they did in the Great Lukiko for everybody to know. And some members were very alarmed. However, Mwanga II surprised everybody by accepting the rules, or the new rules. And so he allowed his palace page boys to go to the bush schools. I tell you what to do. However, when Louis Kasirye and Sikungapi returned with their accompanying Arabs, Mwanga II paid his fine to George Wilson Tayari in rupees. He then sent his men for a second trip because another 60 ivory tusks had been amassed and ready in Budu County. He also gave them a note for the colonial German rulers in Kiziba, in which he complained against George Wilson Tayari. He wrote to the Germans in the note, written in good Kiswahili, that Tayari had become a tyrant and therefore no longer a suitable representative of the British as an assistant commissioner. He explained that the latest ivory tusks consignment was to pay a fine to George Wilson Tayari and he attached the fine demanding note for the Germans to see how evil George Wilson Tayari had become. Now that note made it easy for the Germans at Kiziba to allow the second consignment of ivory tusks to proceed to the East African coast. Now this is Mwanga's ivory tusks. Mwanga II had told his ivory traders not to return because he would personally find them in Usukuma by the time they returned. Unfortunately, the Germans betrayed Mwanga II. Munanga Bazungu, the Bazungu betrayed Mwanga. They sent the complaining note, the one Mwanga had given the Sikungapi guys to show the Germans. The Germans gave that very note and they sent it back to George Wilson Tayari asking, do you see? Do you see? See what the Kabaka thinks of you. That was real betrayal. Betrayal of trust. And so George Wilson Tayari, as you and me would guess, he was furious, very furious. He summoned the two Katikiros, Apollo Kaggwa and Stanley Mugwa, and told them that he could not tolerate Mwanga II anymore because he had ashamed him to the Germans. On top of that, he had also sent a second illegal consignment of ivory tusks to the coast. In complete defiance of him, he ordered the Kokatikiros to go to the palace at night and order Mwanga II to abdicate the throne and go away. It was that bad. However, these events are now in July. These events, by the time they reach this March, they are in July of 1897. So as George Wilson Tayari met the Kokatikiros on the 5th of July 1897, Mwanga II was on a visit to the tombs of his fallen father at Nabulagala Kasubi. He had gone there to communicate and bid farewell to his ancestral parents. The tomb was full of women belonging to the descendant heirs of the fallen Kabaka maternal family. The resident tomb co-heir and custodian of the Nabulagala royal tombs at that time was Princess Damali Nkizi, the one we saw becoming a spiritual father in the baptism of Prince Chua. She was present as well as other tomb officials, including the tomb premier. Every mausoleum of the king has its own prime minister, so the one for Nabulagala was also there. Now, there was a lot of singing as Mwanga II communicated to the spirits inside the giant grass-thatched roof mausoleum, informing them how Apollo Kaggwa had handed over all his powers to the foreigners. Speaking loudly, Mwanga II told the spirits that he could no longer stomach any humiliation, that it was time for him to go away and start a new war that would return him to his full powers and kill Apollo Kaggwa. The women were able to hear for themselves what the Kabaka was saying. And while singing, they began to insult Apollo Kaggwa. In the songs, they uttered the worst words, insults in Buganda at the time by referring to Kaggwa as a native of Bunyoro. That was an insult at that time. Bunyoro was an enemy as far as the kingdom was concerned. So to be referred to as somebody who belongs there was an insult. And they sang songs insulting Apollo Kaggwa as being a native of Bunyoro. Now the songs amused Mwanga II, and he joined in the singing, clapping his hands and very happy. The eyewitnesses to these events was his aide-de-camp, a page boy called Eliezer Chintu. I told you earlier, he's the only page boy other than Ham Mukasa who ever wrote. He wrote a pamphlet. The pamphlet is called Sultani Anatoloka. It was published by Buganda CS Press. Unfortunately, it was not dated. And I actually saw a copy at Makerere. That copy is no longer available. The last time I asked for it, the Africana section of the library could not produce it. Neither did they know where the book had disappeared. However, they keep saying that the professors keep asking for these books for reference and they never return them. So maybe the only copy available may no longer be available. The only copy which was available may no longer be available. I repeat. Now, that is the leading authority. The leading authority we have for exactly what transpired. And there is more. The insults that Kaggwa went through, and as recorded in that pamphlet, are more than anybody can ever think of. On the night of 5th July 1897, the co-catechumen Apollo Kaggwa and Stanislas Mugwanya, according to Eliezer Chintu, went to the palace at night of Mwanga. They informed the Kabaka that George Wilson Tayari was angry with him and had accused him of plotting terrible things, including a rebellion. George Wilson Tayari was therefore ordering for a gun count census. They were going to count all the guns, regardless of which guns belong to who or who or who. Now, in order for that to happen, George Wilson Tayari had ordered that the Kabaka abdicate the throne and go away in exile. Eliezer Chintu says and writes that Mwanga responded by lashing out, not at Mugwanya, but at Apollo Kaggwa. And I want to quote. Of course, Eliezer Chintu's pamphlet was written in Uganda, so I'm translating. And this is how Mwanga replied. You, Kaggwa, you keep reporting me to Tayari. When the Europeans finally leave, will you go with them? Or you think the Queen of England will allocate you a village and you live there? Why do you despise me? You think this throne, if you take it, you as a non-royal, will not ban you? You lack intelligence. And how I regret now, and how I regret not killing you in 1886 with the other palace pages. End of quote. Stanislas Mugwanya jumped in, pleaded with Mwanga, who was a fellow Roman Catholic as far as he was concerned. He was just a sympathizer. He had never been baptized a Roman Catholic. He pleaded for him for peace, and indeed the Kabaka cooled, but chased both men away, asking them to return the following afternoon and get what his answer would be for George Wilson Tayari. On the 6th of July, 1897, Mwanga II, with all his personal effects and the skeletal staff, they fled, telling Tito Nyago to inform Apollo Kaggwa that he, the Kabaka, had left him and others to rule, but they would fail and look for him. Now, Mwanga was becoming spoiled. He had gone into exile in 1888. The Christian exiles of Kabula went looking for him to return him on the throne. Then after they bombed the Rubaga mission, Mwanga ran away to Sese. Again, Captain Lugard sent for him, begging him to return on the throne. So no wonder he's now trying to say things that are very funny. I will repeat. He took with him several firearms, and all his aides were fully armed. Now, he informs Kaggwa that he had left. He left him, he had left power for him, and he was leaving them to rule, but they would fail. And once they fail, they will look for him. I think that is Mwanga now becoming very funny and thinking that things must repeat themselves. Yeah. Now, he passed through the Wansanso gate to Chibuye, and then to Salama, and then of course to Munyonyo port, He had a horse. These horses have been donated to him by the Arabs. Now he sailed by sea to Usukuma. Usukuma is southern part of Lake Victoria in Tanganyika. There he found Louis Kasirie and Sikungapi waiting for him with the ivory tusks, which they had sold. So they had money with them, which they handed over to Mwanga. Now, after handing over the money, Mwanga crossed over to Kochi Chiefdom and received a hero's welcome as he headed to Buddu with Commander Gabwe Ochintu with him. In Buddu, Mwanga made an appeal to his subjects to join him in his struggle to wipe out the Europeans and Apollo Kaggwa as well. And within weeks, the war against neighboring counties of Maogola, Bulemezi, and Gomba had commenced. Tonight, this sequel must end it here, because tomorrow we are going to see what happened next. May the good Lord bless us all.